band. I'm watching it. Oh, they're finishing that. And first, I start to run that hallway. That was awesome. Well, someone just tapped on the match. That was a Lorde.
We started.
Yeah. I went down early. It was fun. So exciting. That was a fun. I think he's 12.
Just another day.
I mean, 189 is that's all right. Yeah, it's close about. He's getting there, but we're very deep. He's 10. Out of 16. So we'll see. Maybe he wins a couple. Yeah, it'll be embarrassing. He's had some this year. Two things: wrestle. Not just this. One of those doesn't work. Now he wrestles. We'll see. He didn't lose one. This kid just sat there. He wanted to be aggressive. And then when you're aggressive, shoot it out. I'd say like to wrestle. Shoot. That was literally
Really?
We've done it 3 times.
Why'd you shoot?
They just got the big news for the wrestling states. They said you're gonna wrestling states. Yeah.
Help control one of them.
That's right.
Oh, I don't
Yeah, that might be one of the oldest sports. I don't know. See, wrestling, football.
Well, the whole thing was attendance over 5,000.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep. Wrestling, want to wrestle states. We have to get back. Which, yeah, we're just happy. We have regular board meetings. That's nice. Yeah. She is. She'll be here. Oh, that's good. I like that. Thank you. Yeah. And you're in they just have it open. Yeah. First of the month, he calls. They paid all the money to watch the play.
This is why I went for
I love when they say
who's gonna wear like after.
they're a little kid. Yeah, my girls. Yeah. So it is a Christmas.
Yeah, my daughter.
Never too late to say happy holidays.
Never too late. No. Roger, you have stuff over here. It's over here.
Ross,
Hi.
how's the patient? We're not on mute yet.
Figured I could go sell over.
Nice.
I feel like I'm leading the meeting.
All right.
I'm glad all you men are here. I'm just gonna
Okay,
unmute.
ready?
Yeah, I'm just gonna unmute.
Okay. Sure. All right. It's now 6 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance.
Yeah, I'm just gonna unmute.
Okay.
Stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, welcome to our regular meeting of January 19, 2022. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the December 15th, 2021 regular meeting. Motion.
Second.
By Brian Burton, second by Brian Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Oh, Superintendent's report, Mr. Ryan.
Good evening, everyone. It feels like a month since I've seen you guys.
Yeah.
It certainly has been. And lots been happening in district. So we're going to start tonight with a great presentation from our pre-K educators. Jess has been working with them to put together a presentation to really start to really think about on that continuum of learning where it all begins, right, with our pre-K students. And, certainly opportunity for any questions as we progress through. So I'll allow Jess to introduce our awesome educators at that level. Multitask, Jess.
Hi, I'm just making sure we have sound. Trying to learn from last time. Right, so I just want to begin, first of all, by bringing it back to our mission and vision, right? And I think tonight when we talk about and hear from our pre-K educators, we're really thinking about our district and thinking about that idea of all means all. So these are our youngest learners coming to us, and we want to make sure that we're really being very clear and intentional with the programming that we're offering, as well as that idea of that progression of designed experiences that really truly starts with our kids in pre-K. And we talk about our vision, so that idea of constant improvement. So when you're thinking about the presentation tonight, we're always thinking about ways that we can improve and ways that we can grow our practice and the ways in which we're collaborating. So this program in particular is a real collaborative experience with our YMCA, right, with our community partner. You'll also hear them talk a lot about the whole child. So when these young learners are coming to them, what it means to really encompass and develop the whole child in this experience. And then that idea is that of that community connection as we collaborate through the Y. So tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle Wenzel. You'll see her being board approved as a PLT lead for her grade level tonight, and Deb Potter and Michelle Peck, who's also joined our team. And then really at this level, these folks are truly supported and partnering with teaching assistants as well. So Paula Crosby is here as well. She supports Michelle and those learners in that classroom. So I'm going to take it away. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, we're excited to present to you tonight. My name is Deb Potter. I started the PreK program in 1999, as you can see. We started in a church, actually 2 different churches. I would have to pack up the classroom every weekend, put everything to the side, and that was under Opportunities for Shenango, and that was half-day sessions. And I had 12 students per half day, which was 24 students is what we started with at that time. And we had 3 adults that were in my classroom. There's some pictures of just a few years ago. Some of our students, that fun things that we did back when we had the church.
I do want to make note that this one right here is my current TA, Lorde. She did volunteer in Deb's class when she was in high school, so it kind of came full circle that she's now working in our program.
I thought you were pointing to a student. I was like, wow.
My TA currently
Yeah.
in my classroom is R.L. Newell, who was one of my
Right.
students.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we didn't come full circle there. That's the same thing for many years. Community-based, after that, when the school took us on, we had to have a community-based pro part of it, and that was the YMCA. After a while, we transitioned to full day classes. We were very excited from going half day to full day. At first, when we only had half days, they had no lunch, no breakfast. We had snacks the parents provided. By bringing on those full day classrooms, we could do that. Having the lunch, having longer days. Kids now do specials with us. So we're really excited that we have that. In 2014, from the half day to full day, we had 3 full day classes. We shifted mid-year. We had half day classes. Halfway through the year, we took kids on. We asked families who wanted full day, and they're overwhelming how many families wanted that full day in 2014. And then we kept 1 half day classroom at that time. And then year 2020, with COVID year, because of COVID, we moved to half days, and we had 8 children in the classroom. And at that time, we had no TA support, and that was half day session. And it was really hard being alone without a TA, working with those 8 children. Then in March of 2021, we moved back to full day programming, and we kept our class size small with 12 students, and we had our TA support that returned at that time. And at that time, we were able to add a 4th full day class with a new teacher.
Okay, so now, and I'm not the new teacher that was added then, but I was just added about 3 months ago, so nice to be here. But now we have 4 full day classes with the YMCA half day program. And total with our students in the YMCA, we have approximately 80 students that we serve. So early intervention is important, of course, and COVID has affected how they arrive to our program. And so we've been seeing a lot more things such as separation anxiety, the regulation skills, self-regulation skills are not what they previously were. Bathrooming concerns, we are doing a lot more potty training in pre-K of 4-year-olds. Their attention spans are short, as well as speech and language delays. We have a large number of children that have extra services from the county. They have fine and gross motor delays as well. So we're just having them come to us, and they've never held a writing utensil, a writing tool, or scissors. So there's that. There's poor social skills. I think because of COVID, different people have different tolerance levels, but a lot of them haven't had the social interactions that they would normally have had at this point in their young lives. And so their social skills are something we work on daily. Lack of processing skills. So they have difficulty following multi-step directions. So they should be able to do 2 or 3 things in a row that we tell them, and they are not able to do that, or they weren't. They're getting much better in that area. Lack of retention of routines in academics. So they're not retaining. There has to be a lot more repetition of what we do. So we're repeating lessons or repeating routines and procedures and going through those things. That happens especially with kids coming in and out of the classroom, with quarantines. I have a student right now it's on 6 weeks that he hasn't been in my classroom. They had one just come back from a 4.5 week time where he was out, and it's rough. They're young, and it's rough to be able, to have to transition for 4 weeks. That's a long time in the life of a 4-year-old. So it's a difficult thing for them to have to kind of switch in and out. So we try to make that transition easy for them, but it's hard in remembering and being able to retain all of that information that they learn. And our pre-assessment that we did for pre-K, the advanced did indicate significant delays in comparison to previous years as well. So there are a lot of challenges, but of course we are up to those challenges and we meet them every single day. So these are some pictures. It's interesting because this one picture is at our publishing party. So pre-K really is the very beginning of this whole school experience. They experience the publishing party just like the other grades did through 6th grade. And so we're starting right away, getting them to be a part of the school community, to be involved, to be able to interact with other people in the school besides just their teacher and TA. So they're really involved. We're trying to get them really involved in the entire community so they start to feel like part of that community right away.
So as Michelle had said, we are trying to incorporate our programs and make it a pre-K 12 district and really bring those early learners that we've had and involve them in the things that we're seeing in the other buildings as well as just down the hall. So as you saw in the previous slide, we had the publishing party. That's part of our writers workshop that we've adopted. Currently this year, I'm the one piloting that program for pre-K, so I'm really diving into that curriculum and doing a lot of the storytelling, more so verbally than it is putting it to paper. And then we've generated a learning experience where we're getting to the point where they're going to be ready for kindergarten when they have a story that's on paper that they can create. And right now it's more of a verbal process than it is putting it to paper. So that's where we are with Writers Workshop. We've also aligned our phonics program to match the K-2 building. We've taken on F&P this year as in the past, we kind of just created our own curriculum as a team that supports our letters and our sounds that go with them to kindergarten. But this year we adopted that phonics program that matches the rest of the grade levels, which has been a learning process in itself, but we're seeing connections that are being made across grade levels. Purposeful People is another one we've done. You'll be very surprised to see 4-year-olds walking down the hallway talking about perseverance, and they're really using those terms and those ideas in a purposeful way that has really resonated with them. And it's really amazing to see that at 3 and 4, they're taking these things that will go along with them all the way up to when they go to high school and they're working with Character Strong.
Just Board of Education, just so you're aware of Purposeful People is a character education program for K-5.
Another way that we're aligned to the rest of the buildings with specials. In the past, we didn't always have specials. That was something when we met with a round table in the surrounding county. We met with other districts and other pre-K teachers and sat around a table and discussed, what are the things that you might be doing that works in your building. And one of those things was specials. And we came back and we fought for that because we're a part of the building. We want to make sure that our kids, if they have the opportunity to go to gym, go to art and learn those procedures and learn those things earlier than kindergarten, why not? So we really want to align that so they're prepared for when they go throughout the building. Same as school routines, we want to make sure that we're providing kids with the best experiences as they can. These are our youngest learners. They're coming in at 3 years old, some of them. And we want to make sure that we're providing them with a positive learning experience that goes throughout not just our building, but provides them with a really good baseline and good structure that's going to take them to where they need to be. Deb said earlier, we have breakfast, lunch, and snack now. That's something we didn't always have, and it's there's children that really that's their favorite time of the day, and that's the fact that we can provide that for kids is a really powerful thing in itself. And then You know, we have school events that we're a part of. You know, we're always involved in everything that's happening in the building, which has always been so great to see. You know, we participate in the Purposeful Parade, publishing party. There are things we've done in the past, like an all-school sing. There's so much that we've done to feel a part of the community in our building, and it's been really nice for our students. And then one of the last things that we're aligned to, so as well as the Common Core modules, we've adapted them to make them fit our program and then work its way up through kindergarten and up. I'll just take you to some of the stuff we're doing today. If you've seen on our Skillshare app, there's, well, I guess it's the school app, but through Skillshare, we have shared some photos of what we've done this month. Our focus was phonics this month and really sharing the hard work that our 3 and 4-year-olds are doing. We're seeing a really good base of what our letters and sounds are for them, and we're seeing growth. And you know, it's January, it's been 4 months, and we're seeing a good amount of growth there with letters and sounds, despite having a new program and it's new to us and new to them. We feel confident that, you know, we're doing what we need to for our kids. And then the last thing we want to share is writer's workshop. So again, I'm piloting this program, so this is one of my students' work. This was a finishing of a narrative unit where they were generating stories about themselves and a memory they have of themselves in their story. And early on, you know, they didn't always know what a story was. So there was a big process of learning what is storytelling, what does a story look like, what's an author, what's an illustrator. And we've come a long way since then of, you know, verbally telling stories and now putting it to paper. So this is a story of one of my students. She titled it, "I'm Going to School," and I have a video here.
I think if you just push play, it's, yeah, click play.
Going to school by home. One day, I was sleeping in mommy's room, and I woke up and I brushed my teeth in my hair, and I lied on the school bus.
I can tell you this was a process. You know, this child didn't have the skills that she has now. You know, the drawings that we started with were very much scribble. It was, you know, one color. There wasn't labeling. I know it might be hard to see, but you know, she's labeling pictures now with her name, and she's sounding out words like bus and bed and pillow. And those are all things that, you know, we started with in September, and it's January, and she's now writing stories on her own and labeling them. And, I mean, if we can see that this happened in a pre-K classroom, what the growth is exponential going on.
And Kyle too, you know, in terms of what that indicates about the partnerships and the relationships that the kids are creating right there in terms of sharing their work and the agency around, you know, I am a writer and I have things to say in the world is all evident there.
It's really, really powerful to watch them share their stories with each other. And it could be as simple as, you know, I went to the playground today and I went on the slide, and you know, they're sharing that story and their friends very interested in that story, and then they come together and they create a story together. So it's been very rewarding experience to watch, to see this kind of growth in such a short amount of time.
Kyle, did she present at the publishing party?
This was not a part of the publishing party we had as a building.
Okay.
This was just in our classroom, but
I
this
feel like I
would be-
remember this story is why. That's great. Great stuff. I love the artwork.
It's really where the, you know, where writing begins. It's orally with the stories you're sharing at home with your young ones, and then they start to think about contextualizing shapes and lines, right? And those turn into being able to have that spatial awareness on paper. And then you start to bring in the idea of the, you know, the phonics piece and the phonemic awareness. So all of that is really evident. Okay, great. Any questions for them?
I have a couple questions. So you talked about at the beginning, some delays that we're seeing in these students. You know, obviously you haven't really investigated it, or you can only kind of deduce why, obviously with the social delays, that's obvious. But where do you think the other delays are coming from? What's not happening today that was happening pre-COVID? I'd be interested in your.
We talk a lot as a team about this, like why, what's happening.
Yeah.
We think a lot of it is technology. No, technology is a big part of our life, but kids are not outside playing. They're not climbing trees. They're not holding any kind of writing tools. Kids don't even know what a pencil is, a lot of them, when they come to us now. And when I started this program, kids would color. They would want to draw. Now, kids are not ready. They're not doing that. So the fine motor is really bad. And the speaking, some of it we think it might be the math
Right.
that we don't know. But I have a lot of children that I've heard for speech this year. I know our whole team has, and we're not sure if people are not speaking to the children. Like, we don't know what's happening in the homes because they come to us. We're just making speculation, but we see a lot of needs for early intervention services.
Do you know if that's consistent across the area, let's say, even, at
I-
least anecdotally?
Yes. it
I've
is.
taught in other places around the area, and it is. And I've taught in other grade levels as well. I was teaching kindergarten and first grade at a nearby district. And it is the same there. It's the same. We're seeing delays, not just in pre-K, in kindergarten, and it follows them up through. And even other colleagues that I've worked with in the upper grades have seen, especially social, emotional, and communication skill issues. Not as much as academic delays. Those are our expertise, right? So we can get at those really quickly. But the social emotional part is definitely even up. And I can say for my own kids, I have 3 kids in the district, and virtual learning was extremely difficult for 1 out of the 3 of my kids. And it just was not conducive for her learning. And so I think that those kinds of things are universal around, and I don't think it's even just this area. I think it's all over, because I have blogs and other ways that I communicate with other teachers, and I think it's a pretty universal thing that's happening everywhere.
Well, and I think with young children too, I'm a therapist, and I know for young children, they learn a lot of the social stuff from their parents, and parents are extremely strained, probably have less ability to want to engage in that way with their kids too. And so I think like all the units from top down are trickling way down.
I think it's just amazingly critical, the work you're doing, though. I reflect back to Dr. Bowers, I don't know, maybe it's 18 months, 2 years ago. She said, she had a report from American something of somebody in pediatrics and somebody. And anyways, it said that, a significant event for a child that's learning is like regression by a year. So if they have if they have the worst educational experience, they regress by a year. And if it happens in back-to-back years, they can regress by as much as 3 years. And the idea of the paper was essentially that COVID's like having that terrible event. And now we've had it in back-to-back years for kids. So it's tough, certainly when they're older, but catching it early and being able to stop that regression early so it doesn't happen and they're able to move through, it's just extremely critical. Can't thank you all enough for the work you're doing.
And on top of that, clearly this team pivoted last year, right? So in March, we said to Mrs. Oliver, we need to expand pre-K. So the team was so great to say, okay, we're going to reach out to parents who had been, had their schedule set up for half day and said, we're pivoting to full day, and we're bringing on a new team member in March, in the middle of all the unknowns. So clearly, kudos to all of you to be able to make that happen and to say, we are committed as a district to, wrapping our arms around kids and families, right? So they are the first, introduction to our district and in terms of our families. So the work is critical.
I have 2 questions. So you mentioned 80 kids. Is that a low number? Like, is enrollment down for pre-K? Like, is there a pocket of kids out there that?
So I think I know where you're going with this. Like, where are the other kids, right? Because if we're graduating 125, where
Well, I know
our,
it goes down as they get older, but I was just,
oh, yeah, so no, in terms of what our grant supports right now is we can have 72 kids enrolled in 4 classrooms full-time.
Okay.
And then we have 8 students right now enrolled through our CBO, which is the Y and a half day experience. And then there are, I believe, moving into our kindergarten next year from our Head Start program, there are 5, I think, who will join. But Roz, you're thinking what I'm thinking. I want to access all of our kids as early as possible,
Yeah.
so.
or the COVID boom that's coming up. how-
Yeah.
And then my second question is, what is we as a board can do to support you guys? You, all you teachers, not you guys.
I'm like,
I
know.
No, even if it comes to you like tonight or 3 a.m. is when I get my great thoughts. You know, let us know what we can do to support you.
I think, you know, for myself personally, and I'm sure my whole team feels the same, you know, when we were in half day, our TAs were a vital role to how we operate in the classroom, and being by ourselves with students that, you know, were coming in a COVID year where things weren't normal for us, and we were trying to kind of navigate that on our own, essentially. Not having that piece there with us was difficult. And we were beyond ecstatic to have those roles back with us. They are another teacher in the room. They are another caring person for those kids. They are another support. They, you know, if I need a moment, I know I can step back. Same for my TA. You know, they are just as important as we are in that room. And I was thrilled to have that back. I know our team was. So I know, you know, supports, anything that you guys can do. We have the TAs now, but, you know, the early intervention services, you know, we're seeing we're seeing more and more kids coming in needing it. And, you know, the county is not equipped to handle the amount of kids that are coming in with more OT, more PT, more speech. And, you know, we do as much as we can with what we have and the amount of time we're given, but, you know, those really, that really are struggling and need that one-on-one or that pull-out service. Those are things that, you know, we really advocate for, but there's no one to do it. It's really difficult to see kids sometimes go a whole year and not get those services when they could have really used it.
It's also a bigger problem with the state education department with teacher certification right now. So for example, you know, we have a teacher who would love to provide some of the services and certification, and getting a hold of teach at the state education department is an absolute nightmare right now. So any advocacy that can come, you know, on the state level in terms of moving that along, because it's you know, terrible to think that we have a teacher shortage, and it's so hard for teachers to be able to access that certification. So I just, you know, sort of the proof is in the pudding here too, in terms of qualitatively what they're talking about, but I just wanted to share a little bit of quantitative data. So as we talked about at the board meeting, thank you, ladies, very much. As we talked about at the November board meeting, we have universal screeners for the first time for academics as well as social emotional learning. And so we went back and looked at, so our kindergartners were not screened in the fall for academics because we were giving them that opportunity to welcome themselves to school. But our iReady at the elementary level assesses these areas for kids. And so our kids who are in first grade now were, you know, some of them were in that full day experience. So you can see, you know, our kids who in October were in full day pre-K, you know, upwards of 50% of them were emerging on or above grade level. When you look at the other side, kids who were not a part of our program presenting as 2 or more years behind. So really the data proves the impact of what these professionals are doing every day. And then when we look at our biomass, so that is looking at, you know, the conduct disorders and negative affects, as well as looking at the strengths that kids have in terms of those core competencies. We heard our counselors talking about that. So if you look at how our current kindergartners rated, and remember, they spent most of last year as half day pre-K participants, you can see that the kids who participated ranked as typical or strengths at a much greater rate than the kids who were not in our pre-K program. So it's really incumbent upon us to do as much as we can to bring as many kids in earlier. And then the lasting effects of this, just, to look at long-term, these are our current fifth graders. So you can see that the number of kids who are at the high risk level still is much greater than the kids who attended our pre-K program. So just some data to really support quantitatively what's happening in these classrooms.
Do we have any survey, for lack of a better term, surveys that get to why people don't attend pre-K or choose to not? Is there reasons other than the typical ones we think of, like, I don't want to send my kid to school yet. I'm not ready to let my baby leave them.
And
So-
that number has grown because of COVID.
Yeah.
So, having parents feel better about the process, a lot of conversations about, we have our pre-K students wearing masks and they are okay. We don't love it. It's not helpful for their speech, but, lots of conversations with parents where if they can help it, because of COVID, it's added to, I used to have waiting lists pages long, and that would be the hardest conversations I had. I had maybe one page of families I had to say we didn't have a spot for. And that's the worst conversation to have, and I hope to not have to have this anymore.
But we want that waiting list back.
Yeah,
Right, so like we're clamoring for, okay, we're aware of 80 students. Where are the other 45?
So that concerns me a little bit, that this program maxes out. So if we did have 120 kids that wanted to attend our pre-K program, how do we make it so that all 120 kids can attend our pre-K program?
Yeah.
It's as simple as hiring a teacher, because it sounded like it was a grant that was capped.
It is, however,
Brian's
the
gonna
state
talk
is
about
working, yeah, they're working really hard on, and you probably heard it in the news, right? Expanding even to 3-year-olds in terms of that early intervention program. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so the UPK grant that we get is capped as long as we hit that student threshold of 72 that Jess mentioned. So last year, when we didn't hit that full-time equivalent, we were going to lose some of our UPK grants. So mid-year pivoted, hired, brought students back in to hit that so we could collect the full dollar amount. Having said that, we spend more, it costs us more than the grant we get to run the UPK program. So currently, our general fund picks up things like benefits for the TAs and teachers that are teaching in that program right now. So to expand, I think Jess mentioned there's a cap on how many students you can have in the classroom. If you add more students, you need more teachers, you need more TAs. So having said that, that's part of the budget conversation. What do we value? What do we want to invest our money in? At the same time, we'll get into this, but the governor's presentation, there's a lot of money out there right now for things like expanding access for full-time 4-year-olds to attend UPK.
Because of the recognition of that data that you just saw, and schools are most equipped to be able to handle the work that needs to be done.
And we obviously have space. Space is an issue,
We're gonna have to make some adjustments to create
but we could
space.
do it, right? So the other thing I have that came to mind is my teachers were talking, is that they said kids were coming to school not knowing what a pencil was, not holding crayons, things of that nature. How can we get those into the hands of the local kids prior to coming to you? So are there things that we can do ahead of time that could get those tools into the hands? For instance, can we partner with a local organizations that's willing to buy 2,000 pencils? Can we partner with somebody who's willing to buy a bunch of crayons? And then we have a observation night where we invite the community who aren't in the program already to say, here's what the pre-K program is going to look like if you have an interest for your child. And we give that stuff out then. And at least know that we are getting some of that stuff into these kids' hands. Just an idea. So to me, some of the solving of the problem is parents probably aren't going to change the way they do things. We have to change. Can we be more proactive with those that haven't gotten to us yet?
So I think the answer is absolutely, Brian. We can absolutely run some sort of campaign, right, to solicit at least people, exposure, right? To what we have to offer. Jen, hopefully you're taking some good notes right now, right? Jen's desire, right? If she could, she'd have, the entire county pre-K at Gibson, right? So, yeah, I think it's, it's all part of the budgeting process as we begin to move forward, but the work that these ladies are doing is, certainly worthy of applause.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
any other questions?
Did you notice someone in that?
Yeah. With my children in there?
Yeah.
They were. I try not to notice them.
It was a couple of years ago.
I saw her. Which one was it?
Ireland.
Ireland.
I was expecting pictures from way back.
I know, I was gonna dig some ears out too.
Now let's-
All three of my kids went through.
Yeah, my
Both
my
age
kids
pre-K
are
with
graduating.
Mrs. Potter. Seamus only had hers for about half the year, but they did so well, and it was such a good experience.
If I could just add, I really could not be more proud. This group has gone through so much, and to highlight Michelle Peff's slide, that those are the barriers. And here we are in January, and we're able to present a video of a child writing a story and telling a story. It is, they're performing miracles in my mind, honestly. And it's so wonderful to see the teachers and TAs working with the kids, and that is why you see the green in the data. And it's because of them. COVID doesn't hold them back. Loss of TAs didn't hold them back. Got them back, but didn't hold them back. And there's just really nothing, there's no barrier they will not get over to do for kids. And if it's best for kids, they say yes. So thank you for all you guys.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan, you want to continue on?
Sure, I'd love to. I'm gonna skip COVID just for a minute because that's too much of a downer right now. And Brian, Bert, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in and provide a finance subcommittee update.
Yeah, so we had a finance committee last Tuesday. Yep, last Tuesday. It was short and sweet.
Thanks, Kyle.
The sweet side of things is fiscally, we're in really good shape right now. A couple years ago, we made the switch in the health insurance plan, and that's been a big part of why we're ahead of the game this year. Again, I think over the last couple of years, it's been a really major part of coming in ahead of the game, because when we plan for health insurance, we plan at max spending. And when people don't go to the doctors, because people are afraid to go to the doctors or whatnot, or because they realize that, maybe I don't need to go to the emergency room for a runny nose. It saves money for the school district, and then we get to put that money back into the budget, and we get to use it in a lot of cases how we see fit, to hopefully potentially do things like bring on a teacher to increase the pre-K program or other things. But the good news is we have to start taking a long, hard look at what we're going to need to prioritize to spend some of this money, right? It's not money we can keep around. We have to use it at some point. And Brian and Scott and Jess and their whole team has come up with some worthwhile ideas while working with the administrators of the buildings and things of that nature, and looking for wish list items. And those conversations are going to be had, and there will be outcomes because we can now, which is a far cry from when many of us started on this board.
Yes.
Whereas, we had to bring our own pencils to board meetings.
Come on. And wear your coats because the heat was on.
Yeah, so it's a good problem to have right now. The other thing we obviously talked about is, capital projects moving forward and just planning out that stuff right now and what some of those things look like. But I think that was kind of the gist of it. The long and short of it is we have to figure out how to spend some money to and use that for making it a better education at the Norwich City School District. So,
I know Brian's talking in jest a little bit too, but we did talk about it. It feels like 6 lifetimes ago. It honestly does, because that's how hard it was early on for a few of us, at least, that were on the board then. It is a wonderful place to be able to talk about being fiscally responsible. And we're not going to be swinging the other way. We're not going to be spending everything, and you know, we're going to be smart with it, but it's a wonderful place to be. Most everybody out here in the audience was around when that was the case. And we were, at least school supplies was a conversation. Maybe not pencils to board meetings, but school supplies was a conversation, and people, I remember lots of teachers emailing us saying, is there any way we can get just, you know, like a couple boxes of crayons or
Yeah.
glue sticks? And we're getting donations, and I know so many teachers use their own money. I mean, this is stuff you don't want to have to, conversation you don't want to have, and we're not there anymore. And that's a really, really
Oh, yeah,
good place to be.
scissors, I think, was it?
All kinds of things. So I just want to congratulate the entire school district, because it takes an army. It's every single person sacrificing every single day, making smart decisions. It takes everybody to be able to get to the point we're at. So thanks to each and every person that got us here. It was a big hill, but it's climbed.
yeah, and Brian brought up a good point. One of the things that we did spend a little bit of time talking about is what are these things that we can do that if we didn't have this money in 5 years or 10 years, we're not going back to a situation where we're cutting 40 teachers. We're not cutting all the aides, all the staff, all the cleaners. Never want to be there again. And that's always going to be in the back of our mind at this board and with this administration. So how can we spend this money? How can we bring some of that back that'll benefit the school as a whole and make sure that it's sustainable without the funds? So very important stuff.
Great point, Brian. I think that was what came to me was sustainability. That's number one for us. We have to move forward in a sustainable fashion. And like Brian said, is that, you know, it takes a lot of work. It has taken a lot of work. And we finally can talk more about academics than finances. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it's what we should be doing. So thank you.
Did I miss anything, Brian, that you wanted?
No, that was good. Is there anything else you want to add? Because I was going to have the timeline.
Just gonna say, just expand a little bit, Brian.
Yep, sure. So perfect segue. As you remember, we approved the budget calendar a few meetings ago. So the next few months, you think February, we're planning to do a tax cap review, a revenue budget review. We can talk in a little minute about the governor's presentation yesterday. Her and her budget director came out with what their plans are. But February is really planned for that revenue piece, along with some of the trends we're seeing again with health insurance, I think our property casualty insurance, OCs, so we can present on those types of things. March, I think we were planning to have maybe departmental presentations and building presentations. So really, I think the question from us is, you know, we recommend definitely going through these areas, but it's really up to you in terms of, you know, what would you like to see? So for example, I could easily go through 10 minutes and blow through a budget presentation. However, if you want to see an hour in depth, you know, diving into buildings, we want to do that and provide that for you. So I think part of this conversation we wanted to bring to you to see, try to get a sense of what do you want to see from us?
Really, the purpose of him saying this is just to create some conversations. We don't have to answer us now,
Right.
As we plan ahead for the next few months, right? What is it that we want to do collectively?
Right. So we need time to let building principal prepare, you know, get ready for what they want to communicate. There's a lot of good stuff happening, and next week we're getting together to go through really what Brian was talking about and start figuring out how we can sustainably plan to use some of these funds that are coming our way. A lot of that is in staffing and programming. There's a lot of good stuff that could be presented to you.
I mean, just, you know, the wish list is already in, right? Michelle asked for 7 million already. So I mean, that's probably, we're gonna have to back that off a little bit, right? And that's gonna be happening next week as a leadership team, but we'll be able to refine that to bring to the Board of Education. So you're thinking about how you want that to be presented.
Good. You want to talk governor's presentation a
Yeah,
little bit?
why don't we, Brian?
So I don't know if anybody tuned into that riveting presentation, but the governor and her budget director spoke, and it was probably the best presentation I've seen in a while, just in terms of the messaging. So it's nice to hear them kind of align their language with what we've been presenting to you for the past 2 to 3 years. So for example, they're talking about running surpluses through 2025, about $5 billion a year after they've contributed to reserve accounts. All of which is their plan to weather things like when 9/11 happened, the 2008 recession, when COVID happened. You know, we can't plan for those, but you can predict that something may happen down the road. Their whole messaging was around avoiding that big catastrophe impacting school districts. So they're going to contribute to reserves. They're going to capitalize on the federal funds they have over the next 3 years to contribute to reserves, to really try to smooth out those peaks and valleys, which again is what we've been preaching as well. So a lot of good news on that front. They're fully funding foundation aid, at least that's what they're promising right now. The state aid runs just came out today. So good news for Norwich, the same thing we've been saying all along. Good news, bad news. Bad news is Norwich was underfunded historically. That's being fixed in the upcoming budget this year and next year. So they're going to fully fund foundation aid phase over the next 2 years. So 50% is going to come to us in the 22-23 budget, 50%, or we'll be at 100% in the 23-24. So that's to the tune of $1.4 million coming this upcoming budget season, double that for the following.
So then go back to what Chris said about sustainability, Brian. What does that mean?
So part of that, part of the presentation that the budget director gave was he covered risks. So one of the risks is in the state, we have the most amount of people leaving the state year over year.
300,000 last year.
Right. So as your tax base starts to do this, but you have a state government that wants to have spending go like that, you have that upside down triangle, right? So there, it was why I say it was a good presentation. They actually referenced the fact that we're losing population, and that is something they have to take into consideration as they plan ahead. So they even referenced, you know, we're fully funding foundation aid, but we need to make sure it's sustainable going forwards. In other words, districts plan to rely on that as operating aid. You can't just cut it and bring it back, cut it and bring it back every year. So like I said, it was a good presentation in terms of they're saying the right things right now. Other risks, they talk about stock market, that's how they make interest off a lot of their investments, which funds things we do. They talked a lot about telework and the impact on cities. So New York City generates most of our state revenue. There's a lot of people that don't moved out of the city, don't live there anymore. That teleworking still have that big New York City job, but they now live elsewhere. That's a risk we're looking at. That's income tax that potentially leaves our state. So long story short, there's a lot of good news in the next 3 to 4 years. However, we're always going to keep our eye on. They say what they're going to give us. We have to make a judgment as to whether that's going to happen or not.
My opinion aside, did they talk about legalization of marijuana and driving those funds back to school districts? Because that's what Colorado always plays up. That,
Lottery, yeah,
The gambling.
online sports betting.
That's right, online sports betting. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, opinions aside, at least if that's going to be there, whether you want it or not, at least if the funds can come back to the schools, it's, we'll take the benefit on that end.
I think they learned that from the tobacco settlement when it went to roads or something.
Yeah, exactly. Infrastructure, school districts.
Yeah. And like I said, whatever your opinion is, a lot of, a chunk of our money is funded through lottery. So, yeah. Any questions?
So it's really about, right, always, I think we have to continue to bring it back to, if we are going to be a model organization as stated in our mission and vision, right? What positions do we need? So you heard me say last time, it's not about restoration of positions. It's making sure that we have alignment in that design experience, right? For authentic learning for all of our students, all the way up through, starting in our pre-K students, right? And providing that experience for them and getting our hands on them as fast as possible to really shape who that student is, right? These are up and comers, if you will. So I had this discussion item, but it really is specific to this conversation. So I'd like to bump up Coleman Center just for a second. So some of you have heard me talk about Coleman Center and or I've seen it in Friday Reflections. The Coleman Center is a daycare / pre-K program for Sydney School District. It's right down the road. And a while back, they created a collaboration, I'll call it, a partnership with Sydney Central School District. And so they have recently expanded. They have a board. They operate similar actually to a board of education. They've expanded to provide opportunity from the age of 6 weeks all the way up to pre-K ready. Okay, so it's a daycare literally for six-week-old all the way up through to pre-K. And almost every one of those students transitions to be a Sydney Warrior, right? So think about that creation of pipeline. It is an amazing program. From what I've seen from the outside of the literature that I've read about, and certainly personal experience from those people that have children that attend there, okay? The reason I said it to you is because I approached the director and said, you know what? I currently serve on the Commerce Shenango, and there's a huge conversation around daycare deficit in the city limits. So the need is absolutely here in district, not in district, in community, right? And so would you consider a pilot satellite in the city of Norwich, right? And where does the school district come into that, right? We don't have a responsibility for daycare. We're at a place because of staffing shortage that we have to really start to think outside of the box when it comes to retaining staff as well as recruitment of staff. We need to really start to think about some things that are going to get some of those younger, right, people directly from college into upstate New York. There's not an awful lot, right, that's drawing people into a Norwich, New York as of right now. The downtown restoration and revitalization initiative is something that I think can help improve that. But Sydney has a cooperation or a partnership with them right now where they offer incentives to all employees that Sydney will set aside a certain amount of funds each year and pay for half of the tuition of their child to attend the Coleman Center, to retain staff. That's to the tune of $5,500 for any staff member. That would be an absolute game changer for us in this district. For those, and I think what's going to start to happen because of the staffing shortage is that there's going to be a cannibalization that exists in this region, right? It's going to be the district that can pay the most and has the most lucrative contract when it comes to retirement. You're going to see, 15 to 20-year veterans leaving their positions to jump ship because of, what we're offering in terms of insurance for retirement, those types of things. How do we get the young people, right? The aspiring mothers, the family focused people, oriented people that want to really get their family started. I think this might be a great leverage point for us. So I don't say that as a point of manipulation. I say it as a potential to look at another partnership that, number one, feeds that pre-K program that we just talked about, right? And also potentially draws the opportunity for retaining and recruiting some of the best staff that we can get. So we're working with the Coleman Center right now. We think we potentially have some identified area up at Gibson. So imagine, if we had like 25 kids from the age of 6 weeks all the way up to pre-K. I'm not suggesting that we do anything with our community partner YMCA. I think that's running really well. I think we have to continue to celebrate that and continue to nurture that for what it is. So I'm not suggesting we jump ship with pre-K, but really look at that that continuum that they offer for daycare specifically. And I think we could do that at Gibson. So think about if we had new teachers at Gibson that had, just coming off maternity, for example, and they could bring their child with them to work. There's something that moms, new moms have to do, right? A couple times during the day, they could go right into that area, see their child, right? Be with their child, do what they have to do with their child. So I think that there's all kinds of benefits that come with having it right on campus. And so we're looking at that as an opportunity with the Coleman Center right now. Not even close to any agreements, not even close to any, even saying yes. But their board is interested in really looking at a couple pitfalls that they're sort of conscious of, right? And that is that daycares have historically failed in the city of Norwich. And so they look at that and they go, wait a minute, there's got to be a reason for that. And so let's look at and investigate some of the reasons why daycares have failed. To me, this is a different situation. You have an established, successful model, the Coleman Center, right? It's grant funded. If we could guarantee a revenue source to them, right, there has to be interest in the expansion. There's a possibility for that interest in expansion. So we're just having that conversation.
Would it be limited to just staff?
No, but again, it depends on capacity, right? They'd have to hire staff to be able to come here. There's all kinds of variables. So they just expanded to separate buildings. So I now have 2 buildings and they have 66 students. They have students coming in from Unitigo, from Franklin, but mostly, I think right now they have almost 30 Sydney staff member children that attend. So
I also offer one other thing. They do my daughter goes to the Common Center in Sydney and they offer before school and after school care too. So buses go right there. And kids have to leave early, especially with our early start day. It's nice to see the kids off and they just get buses to school.
yeah, it just gives us the opportunity to think about landscape differently than we currently provide, right? So certainly a need in this area, right?
Daycare is a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. So I just want to put it on your radar, that's all. As that's one of those partnerships that we're thinking about, right, falls under that HR piece too. Okay. All right, COVID.
Yeah.
How long has it been since you talked about this, Ryan? About 5 minutes? Yeah.
Just before I got to the board meeting, yeah.
Yeah. So this continues to be, right, a challenge. This is no surprise to anybody on this board or anybody that's listening from home. But I would tell you that the greatest challenge right now is maintaining staff morale because of the level of exhaustion. And here's why, right? We have a significant staffing shortage when it comes to trying to cover staffing positions in district as a result of isolation or quarantine, okay? And so, we're having conversations right now, specifically at the secondary level, to say, how can we help with this? We don't have a lot of answers. We have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about where staff are. So for example, right, there are 8 instructional bells at the secondary level right now, okay? Teachers teach 6 bells. That means they have 2 bells that are considered duty-free preparation time, okay? If we don't have coverage for Brian Bartlett, who called in sick today, right, we're gonna ask anybody that has a duty-free preparation bell during the bell that needs coverage. This happens every single day. So the example I gave you in the Friday reflection, last Friday, there were 6 people out that were on cover at the high school, okay? So that's 8 instructional bells. That's 48 bells that were covered by someone. And it really begins to beg the question, we think about the student experience of engagement, connectedness, and learning, right? More now than ever. And so we're asking teachers to basically go 8 bells total and maybe get their lunch. No, by the way, we're asking them to go down and cover 12 minutes, if not more, of lunch as well, because we have staffing shortages to supervise the cafeteria. So maintaining in-person instruction continues to be our goal and will continue to be, but it's taking a toll on where our staff is right now because of limitations with coverage. Right? So I just wanted to bring that to you, just to say this will continue to be a conversation, specifically at the secondary level. When I say secondary, I'm talking 6 through 12, about how we can help with this. And so we had a great conversation with some staff today about this exact thing. This isn't us versus them, this is us together, really trying to conquer some of those challenges that we as educators are facing today to maintain in-person instruction, okay? So I want to quickly shift to the new protocols around COVID. As you know, they've reduced the isolation and quarantine if you're asymptomatic to 5 days. That's a benefit, right? It's a benefit in terms of getting staff back quicker. If they're asymptomatic, it's a benefit to getting students back quicker. And the contact tracing process really identifies very few students because of the masking and because of the, call it social distancing, if you will. It's not what we used to think of social distancing, right? There's a lot more interaction, especially in the hallways, that kind of stuff. But it creates less what we'll characterize as high-risk exposure with the new contact tracing procedure, okay? So that's a positive. At the end of the day, right, you saw our numbers in the last couple of weeks. Our numbers are pretty high, and those are the ones that are reported. Remember, now we have to report those that test at home. That's different than where we've been. And so you're going to see a significant increase because we were only reporting those that we could verify with the Department of Health. Well, here's what we know. Shenango County Department of Health is taxed, right? The capacity, the issue of capacity, right, has finally reached that threshold where protocol is now changing as a result of their inability to maintain, right? But to me, that's why the biggest changes have recently occurred. And so I just want to review with you where we are with vaccination rates. And this is important because right? What they're really talking about focusing on for in-person instruction is instruction time only and riding a school bus to and from school. So they're discounting in some of the new protocol, the after-school connectedness or clubs, activities, sports, musicals, right, whatever, all that stuff that falls into that category. Because what they're saying is that if you are quarantined, yes, it's only a 5-day. However, if you don't have a booster, it's 10 days. Okay, so I don't know if that's news to any of you. Just want to make sure you knew that.
If you're eligible.
If you're eligibility for booster, right? And that depends on when you got your last round of it. There's all kinds of management issues around just that piece alone
That's
for,
challenging.
for our school nurses. Right? But I want to talk about vaccine rates, right? What the current system, this was Friday of last week, reflects, I got this late after I sent you guys the reflection. So I was going to include this, but I just want to bring it to your attention. In 12th grade, 66% have 2 shots or more. 5% have 1 shot. 13 students are boosted. 11th grade, 52% with 2 shots or more. 1 student with 1 shot, 9 are boosted. 10th grade, 40.5% with 2 shots or more. 1 is boosted. 9th grade, 41% with 2 shots or more. 2% with 1 shot. 5 are boosted. 8th grade, 38% with 2 or more. 4% with 1. 3 are boosted. 7th grade, 29% with 2 shots or more. 4% with 1 shot. 0 are boosted. 6th grade, 27% with 2 shots. 2% with 1. 0 are boosted. I would have predicted that our numbers would have been higher up to this point, but I think that's important, right? As we continue to really think about how we're providing in-person instruction to students and as the protocols continue to change.
Do we have numbers on staff and teachers?
I don't have them off the top, but I can tell you that we have, what we set up was opportunity for, let me back up. You have to be tested weekly unless you are vaccinated. The only way to get out of that is to show proof of vaccination. We test approximately 40 people on our staff. That includes all support staff, drivers, all of that, 40 people weekly. That has revealed over the course of last week, 5, if not 6 positives in what's called pool testing. We send that to a laboratory within 48 hours to get the information back.
Who pays for that testing?
We have what's called the ELC grant, which is a county grant. So we have CNA students at BOCES that we're paying for right now to come down to administer that test.
You do the pool test. If you get a positive, then you individually test.
Right.
Is that how it works?
Yes.
Generally, I know.
Like bigger schools use the pool test.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Once you get the positive, it is.
Works amazing.
Yeah.
So the good news is right now we have the ability to put no more than 6 people in a pool. And so narrowing it down, for example, 6 people will come back. Basically what it says is 1 person was identified positive in that pool.
Yeah.
Now we'll individually test all 5 or 6. Right? So it is becoming to be a real management issue, right? When it comes to capacity of our nurses, we're pulling clerical to assist our nurses on a regular basis to try to manage some of this. Parents are confused. So what's the first, step that they take? They call the school, right? So, our clerical isn't necessarily up to date on where the process is, so they kick it over to the nurse. And so it's just that daily grind. So that just, I share that with you just as a representation of the impact that the pandemic is having on our in-person experience right now. However, I don't think you'd find an educator right now that says in-person is not the most important thing. I really don't. And so I wanted the public to tell you that the efforts of our staff all the way around, from drivers to aides to our leadership team, have been unbelievable. We truly have, to make sure that we continue to maintain this in-person instruction. Okay.
I have a question, please, kind of the smoking question, is that I 100% support in-person instruction. I think it's the absolute most important. However, how long can we do that and keep our staff sane?
That's where we are, Chris.
Can we potentially say can we effectively have a break week where where we do some sort of hybrid instruction or limited and still accomplish what is necessary for our students to succeed, but also give our staff the ability to take a deep breath and do something different so that we don't have meltdowns or, I mean,
So let me just share with you where the conversation started to go today. At the secondary level specifically, right? We're not talking pre-K through 5. If I teach art, for example, right? I might be in support of maybe taking one day a week to say this is an asynchronous day. Maybe we reach out to those students that we believe require some intervention of some sort. If I teach a Regents level class, that has a significant impact. So New York State still has not declared whether or not the Regents will be in existence at the end of the year. Remember, part of the evaluation process, 20% of that is the district-wide measure. It's called the SLO, right? And it represents 20% of every single staff member's overall composite score. And how that's reflected is the overall performance of students on the 5 major Regents exams. So there's concern over that, right? It's not only is the Regents going to occur, what's it going to look like for my students, right? When it comes to overall achievement, and how will my EPPR score, my evaluation at the end of the year be impacted by it as well? So let me throw another stat at you, right? We are hovering, and I can say with 75% accuracy, maybe more, maybe that's a bit conservative. 75% accuracy or more, that we're hovering around the mid-40s in terms of overall student attendance. Mid-40% is absent. Chronically absent. 20 or more. So think about 20 or more missed days because of isolation, quarantine, or just sick. And then the staff that's sick. As a result, we're covering that class. So the missed learning opportunities that are occurring in every school in the state, by the way.
And you're primarily treating right now, or
It's in every
That's every building. Every building.
I think we're all hoping and praying that March comes and the variant moves through. And I mean, whether it's business, whether it's school, whether it's anything, this is, the rate is higher now than it's ever been, right? The transmission rate, thankfully, it's not.
It's coming down from where it was last week.
Finally starting, I saw that, yeah, it's starting to make a move. It's
about 50%.
you'll watch it, but like,
cross our fingers. I'm with Chris, though. I mean, hopefully it keeps coming down precipitously and we are in a different place in 3-4 weeks, but if not, I think it behooves us to get creative to find ways to give people breaks, and I'm sure you're thinking of those, but I think we probably all would say we support that.
I mean, we get to mid-February, it wouldn't kill us to take a snow day. Right? I mean, I've got teacher friends and they keep looking at the calendar just to see, is there a chance it's gonna be a snow day? Yeah, they're looking
Not only
at
that,
the
we've
weather
had no
report.
snow, right?
Yeah, and for a month, there was no snow in there.
We had one potential snow day and we had the day off anyway.
Yeah, we could have had one Monday. But, I think we have enough of them. And you can't carry them over. I think that's.
Well, you could do it for February break, right? I mean, that's a consideration, I suppose. You could add on a day or start a day early or whatever, and just say, instead of Friday and Monday, it's Friday, Monday and Tuesday, and we'll hammer a snow day and take our chances in the backside.
Yeah, notification. One of the biggest things I hear is when things change, that parents are having to change very quickly. So if we do something like that, daycare, work schedule, things of that nature affects the community significantly. Me as an employer, it affects me significantly. So, we're gonna do something. I'm all for reward folks with a day off if we can do it for them. Everybody needs it, honestly. So, if we can get to that point, let's do it.
Thanks, and I think that, just the piece that I would add for you is that, you talk about, I think Chris used the word sanity, right? I think what we see is compassion fatigue, right? It's like, man, I'm feeling everything that you're feeling, kid, and I got nothing left to give you, and you need an awful lot right now. And so you see, the potential for dysregulated staff and students, right? At a much higher frequency than you would before. And so I'm not sure although I love the gesture, a snow day doesn't really give you time to recoup, but if we could maybe think about, one day a week that is really, let me back up. We have to start thinking about this conversation around intervention. If we have 40% of our students that are missing 20 or more days, that's missed learning. There's no such thing as catch up, right, for these students. So we have to provide intentional opportunity to really try to address some of those deficiencies that those students have, right? Our current structure does not support that. The 9-bell schedule doesn't support it. You have a place to be every single bell, especially if we have the continuation of, staff shortages and the need to cover. So, an opportunity might be something like, a Wednesday is a day where everybody's asynchronous, except for I'm going to identify a group of students that I'm going to bring in at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, that kind of thing. And it might be to extend, right, and enrich simultaneous to filling in some of those gaps. So I think that's the conversation that we're having. But again, if I'm a Regents teacher, I'm like, hey, that's a whole missed day of contact with my kids. That's another day of students not having a hot meal. There's all of those types of things begin to factor in. So a lot of things to consider.
It's tough. It's one of those things. Like, the break sometimes makes you twice as effective on the backside. So you just keep plowing forward. And yes, you have that extra day of instruction, but at what cost?
Yeah.
You're 50% effective versus if you can just catch up in the field. I know a day never catches anybody up, but I know a day by not doing it, it doesn't catch you up either.
Yep.
It's such a tough push and pull, but you certainly have our support.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway is that we as a board, I think collectively understand that there's a lot of tired folks, frustrated folks, and that we recognize the work that everyone is doing and the stress level and the compassion fatigue, as you indicated, Mr. Ryan, and we're interested in supporting whatever it takes to help us move forward, because we all recognize the difficulty.
What I heard today, nobody actually used these words. What I heard today was the greatest frustration comes from not being able to impact what they feel they should be able to impact. It's things that are out of their control, that they can't somehow, get all these kids in school at the same time, because of the attendance rates. And that's really difficult. If you have a kid that's been quarantined or isolated multiple times, just where do you start with that kid? And then the kid throws their hands up in the air and says, you know what, I can't catch up either. Right? And then the white flag comes out. And that's where the anxiety is really starting to take hold. So all I'm doing is really just creating awareness for you as a board of education to say, organization, I think that's where we are. We have to be very mindful of that. And we're going to work with our unions to really talk about how to mitigate some of that first step. Okay? Good. Thank you. Okay, well, that was it for superintendent report.
Yeah, we don't have it. I mean, obviously this all has an effect on academics. We don't have a really way of measuring that.
Yeah, so here's what I want to tell you, and I'm going to ask Jess to help me with this a little bit. At the beginning of the year, I want you to think about the last 2 years. Absence of Regents exams, right? Absence of really 3 through 8 data that was meaningful because of the sort of sparsity of students that took the exam, okay? So those are our 2 big standardized, assessments that we use to determine, levels of achievement, where we are, comparing where we've been and where we are. And so remember at the beginning of the year, we talked about investing in these screeners to really establish the baseline. We waited till about October was the first administration date for the academic screener. And we just are starting about third of the way through right now with the second piece of that. It's a 3-part series, if you will, right? So first of the year, beginning of the year, and then end of the year baseline screener, the initial baseline was in October. But that screener will give us some data that I think will be important. Because we're a third of the way through right now, if not a half of the way, we'll have that for you in February. And I think that's going to be some important information to look at to see where we started and where we currently are, right? And I'm not sure you can say, how does that compare to last year? How does it compare to 2 years ago? Right. We don't have that baseline. It's apples and oranges at this point, right? That's why this screener is so important. And so, just anything you want to add with that?
Well, I just think that teachers are already seeing real value and power in it. So I can tell you at the elementary level, I think they're about a third of the way through in terms of that, and they're already seeing the growth from October to now. So really validating for teachers. iReady is the academic screener that they're using at the elementary level, and it's really powerful in that it breaks it down by phonological awareness. It gives teachers next steps for small groups. So when we talk about interventions, it's becoming a true data point. And then at the secondary level, it's a bit of a different approach, right? So, you know, Mr. Wood and Mr. Graham and Mrs. Marvin and I are talking about kids and their approach to this type of test. So we are getting better every day at our thinking in terms of, I know the high school, actually, that was great. The teachers came together and said on that, I think it was the day after, it was a remote day. They said, you know, can we take that as an opportunity to say to kids, you're going to spend that time taking these assessments so we can get a clear picture. And that came from the teachers, which I thought they felt very empowered in that situation. That was great. The thing that we're finding with kids, you know, of that age is really being able to say, here's the purpose and helping them to see the value in it. So there's certain aspects of it where kids can see their scores right away. And, you know, how are we communicating with parents? These are all things that we're going to evolve at and get better at. But I know that the other piece of that is that these data points are becoming part of our grade level conversations when we're talking about what interventions are we providing for kids. So it's great because before it was more like, you know, are kids compliant and turning in assignments, because that often can equate to a grade, versus how are they scoring on an ELA exam that's really nationally normed. So yeah, as we get into February, we'll have a much clearer picture of that holistic data.
I'm excited to see where that takes us.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, next item.
So, you know, blending sort of discussion and so with that, so for purposes of transition, Pam, we're going to discussion item number 2. And that is an update on the, call it the SRO conversation, or call it the quasi SRO conversation. This is a collaboration between Norwich City County Council, right, involving the mayor, of course, the city police, and us. And so we have, I just learned today that the county council passed opportunity to sign the agreement between the city and the school district to have 2.5 hours of officer presence in the high school cafeteria during really our lunch times. It's 11 o'clock to 1:30. And that officer presence will be really for just building relationships, right? And having a true presence with kids and developing some rapport. That will happen for approximately a month. And then after a month's time, or at the next common council meeting, they will move to hopefully approve that as a full-time assignment for an officer in the city. And that person will join our ranks and start moving the area of safety planning differently than we've done before.
And if they do move, is the intent to just be high school, just be middle school, high school, or to have presence?
It would be, you know, predominantly presence, right, middle school, high school, but through the entire district.
Good.
Yep.
Cool.
We're gonna work to establish roles and responsibilities and really begin to grow this into something big.
Cool.
I think this has great potential.
Does the school pay for that full-time position or
The
the
school will pay for that. Yep.
and then who does, but they still report to the chief of police? or-
Yes, what I said to them is that I am not in the business of evaluating an officer. Yeah. Yeah, so the chief of police and I would be, you know, main points of contact, right? And we'll work and do some training in-house to really talk about what those roles and responsibilities are.
And maybe the chief could come in sometimes and observe the safety officer to see how they're doing, that if it's a good fit or not for that person.
Yeah, so here's what I can tell you, Raj, they don't have a formal tool to evaluate, right? Because this is so new to them.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna walk down that path slowly, right? And make sure that we have clarity in terms of what that officer is doing. Remember, they're not there to be, you know, the Khmer Rouge, if you will. They are there to really help establish presence and develop relationships with kids and be assistants, right, to any of our leadership team that need it.
Tell your history teacher.
Vietnam reference, sorry. Any questions on that?
Questions?
That sounds like a great idea. Great plan.
Awesome. So right now, the agreement has an hourly rate reflected. And so as we think about 2.5 hours a day, it's what will be billed quarterly on an hourly basis.
Okay, so we'll move on to item number 4, consent items. I'll entertain a motion to move to accept all the consent items.
Motion. Second.
Okay, who moved it? John Williams moved it. Brian Burton second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. All right, number 5, action items. The first one is Unified Sports Program approval. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached request and add the NISPA, or Special Olympics Unified Sports Program to the Norwich City School District Athletic Program. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any
Second.
questions on that?
Brian
Do
Reed.
you remember that presentation we had? That I gave you guys in, I think it was on reflection.
Yeah.
Brian Burton, you're thinking no.
So I read this the other day on
Yeah.
the New York State Public High School Athletic Association site.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused as to how it will be implemented in the school itself. It didn't seem like there was a lot of guidance. It says, let's create this partnership. Will you do it?
Yeah,
And
so-
that was it.
Yeah, in conversation with Mr. Trimble, they're starting very small, right? It
Okay.
might be a bowling team to initiate.
Okay.
And so we've identified, some of our students that are, fit the category that, the guidelines sort of adhere to. And I think starting small, just having some fun with it, right? And there's aspirations of having a basketball team as well, filling that gymnasium to support, our students.
Would like baseball tournaments be
It's
something
extension,
similar?
Very similar extension, right?
Yep.
But imagine being in the busing students here and watching a game of students under the auspice of Special Olympics.
Great.
That's what we aspire to.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know if you had more clarification. It was very difficult to get from my.
I think they left it vague for a reason.
Okay.
So I had a motion from Brian Reed. Who was the second? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Brian Burton. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. All right, all the following are all approval of the second reading of board policy. So I'm just going to read the policy itself and then we'll just. So for second reading, A 502-4, eligibility for transportation. B 700.3, emergency disaster management plan. A 302.3, instructional materials reconsideration policy. A 500.3, medical examinations. B 300.6, print and non-print instructional materials. A 502.2, responsibility for transportation generally. And A 500.8, supervision. Do I have a motion to accept this for all second reading? Moved by Roz. Second by John Williams. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. I will also entertain a motion to accept the personnel recommendations.
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed. Second. Second by Kieran. Any discussion on personnel recommendations?
Comment. Just want for you to notice that there's, hopefully what you're seeing in that is a significant empowerment of our instructional staff. We're characterizing as PLT lead at various content areas and grade levels throughout the entire district. And those people will act as, obviously, as the name connotes, leads or liaisons to their grade level back to a district-wide guiding coalition that will make decisions around instructional. Decisions.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. Do we have any public comment over there? I don't see it. That's it. We have one. So, we have We do not have a need for executive session this time, correct?
We do not.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved by Brian, second by.
Whoa, you're in on that one.
Any comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting- Yep. Meeting ends at 7:24. Thank you, everyone.
I didn't